Kia ora tātou katoa. Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Chris Finlayson.
Mr. Speaker, I too stand to acknowledge the people of Ngati Porou, and especially those who have travelled from Tairāwhiti and are here in the galleries today to listen to this, the third reading of the Ngati Porou Claims Settlement Bill. I acknowledge them and all of those from Ngati Porou who have worked so very hard to make this day possible. I acknowledge the many Ngati Porou who are no longer with us, who provided leadership and inspiration to Ngati Porou negotiators and their people. In saying this, I too want to refer to the great Sir Apirana Ngata, who was such a distinguished member of this House, and I am sure he would be very, very pleased to see the third and final reading of this bill. I also want to mention Sir Henry Ngata, who died only recently, some years ago. Shortly before his death, I was in Gisborne on a hui to deal with the foreshore and seabed legislation, and I will never forget his presence, his overwhelming presence, and his utterly principled position on that particular topic. The Ngati Porou negotiators have done Ngati Porou proud throughout their dealings with the Crown. They've conducted themselves with honour, with dignity, even in very difficult times. And so I'm so very pleased that many of you are able to be here today to witness your treaty settlement passing into law. Mr. Speaker, this bill settles the treaty grievances of Ngati Porou. In the bill, the Crown formally acknowledges its breaches of the treaty, offers an apology, and provides cultural, financial and commercial redress. And the people of Ngati Porou have waited a very long time for this day. After many years of preparation, formal negotiations began in 2008. The Crown recognised the mandate of Te Runanga in April of that year. Negotiations with Te Haiata, the negotiations subcommittee of Te Runanga, commenced in July 2008, and a long non-binding high-level agreement outlining key elements of financial and commercial redress was signed by the Crown and Ngati Porou on 23 October 2008. After a period of robust negotiations, a deed was initialled in October 2010. During November and December of that year, Te Runanga undertook a ratification process for the deed and the proposed post-governance entity. The work of the negotiators was acknowledged and endorsed by the people when those who voted overwhelmingly to ratify the settlement. Mr. Speaker, the Crown and Ngati Porou signed a deed of settlement on 22 December 2010, and since then both parties have worked together constructively as their legislation has been progressed. The passage of this bill is the final step which will enable the Crown to provide settlement redress to Ngati Porou. I know that most of the elected representatives of the governance entity are here today. I know you have achieved a lot, including your inaugural AGM in February this year, and I wish you very well in your endeavours. The people have put their faith and trust in you, and I'm confident you're going to do what is best for the iwi. Mr. Speaker, the historical grievances relate primarily to the Crown's failure to honour its treaty promise to respect Ngati Porou rangatiratanga over their own affairs. The Crown imposed land tenure reform on Ngati Porou, which deprived iwi members of collective control over their land and made it difficult to use their land for economic development. This has helped make the East Coast one of the most socio-economically deprived regions of New Zealand. Despite the Crown's failure to honour its treaty promise and the resulting deprivations, Ngati Porou has played a very significant role in a number of aspects of New Zealand's life. One aspect in particular I want to mention is the long and proud record of service in New Zealand's defence, and this has not come without very tragic consequences. The immediate and long-term consequences for Ngati Porou of the Second World War was that every Ngati Porou whānau had members who either did not return home or returned badly scarred by their war service overseas. Some family names and even family lines no longer exist because the last representative died as a result of the war. This resulted in the loss of many present and future Ngati Porou leaders. On behalf of all New Zealanders, I thank Ngati Porou for the sacrifices they have made for our country. Mr. Speaker, the bill gives effect to the undertakings by the Crown and the deed. The reconciliation redress includes an agreed historical account, the Crown acknowledgements and apology, and the naming of New Zealand Defence Force scholarships and higher defence training awarded to people of Ngati Porou descent. The cultural redress package includes the vesting of sites of cultural and historical significance and a strategic partnership with the Department of Conservation over specific public conservation lands within the Ngati Porou area of interest. And I'm very pleased also that as Minister of Culture and Heritage, I can say that we're working together with Ngati Porou on the long overdue Maori Battalion Museum in Gisborne, and in that respect I acknowledge that wonderful New Zealander, I have to say, after Parakura Horobia and I better say Hekia Parata, my favourite Ngati Porou, Nolan Raihania, a young member of C Company who fought for his country in several theatres of war, came back to New Zealand, made his contribution, and is now the esteemed chair of the Runanga. Mr. Speaker, there's also redress designed to facilitate good working relationships between Ngati Porou and the Crown, and that includes protocols with government departments, a letter of commitment with Archives New Zealand, the National Library and Te Papa Tongarewa to facilitate the care and management of Ngati Porou Taonga, and a commitment by the Crown and Ngati Porou to develop a relationship accord to work together to address contemporary issues within the Rohe. And then there's the financial settlement of $110 million, comprising $90 million in financial and commercial redress and $20 million in cultural and historic redress and redress over Crown properties, including licensed forest land. Mr. Shane Jones said it so well, and I've said it at other times during the day, redress can never fully compensate for what has been lost. But having acknowledged that, the settlement given effect by this bill will provide Ngati Porou with a platform for future growth. Mr. Speaker, there are so many people who have contributed to this settlement over the years. I acknowledge the contributions by my predecessor, Dr. Michael Cullen, to the early stages of the negotiations. I, of course, acknowledge Mr. Horomia, who, as I've said in other debates, is always so helpful to have a quiet chat to about issues. I also acknowledge my ministerial colleagues, in particular the Minister of Maori Affairs, the Minister of Conservation and the Minister of Land Information. I want to acknowledge the valuable support and contribution made by the work of many government officials and departments who contributed to this settlement. I particularly want to place on record the wonderful work by Paul Swain, who was my Crown negotiator, did such a wonderful job that he's been press-ganged into other negotiations. Most importantly, I want to acknowledge the hard work and commitment of Ngati Porou, particularly those from Te Haiata who negotiated the settlement, and I particularly mention my other favourite Ngati Peruvian, Dr. Apirana Mahawika. In fact, I should have mentioned him earlier and I apologise. He's a great New Zealander. I've known him for over 20 years and I always enjoy working with him. The dedication and determination of the negotiators has been absolutely vital in the path towards achieving settlement. So I wish Ngati Porou all the very best. I acknowledge, of course, when I look at today's order paper and see item 53, Ngā Rohe Moana o Ngā Hapu o Ngati Porou Bill, that we have some unfinished business. I think my first task after becoming Minister of Treaty Negotiations was to have to tell Dr. Mahawika and the team that this bill would have to be put on hold while we looked at the foreshore and seabed legislation. But members of the iwi will be pleased to know that we've had a number of meetings. The new legislation has been passed and it's my sincere hope and indeed expectation that this legislation will be progressed in the very, very near future. So congratulations once again. thank you to those who have made such a significant contribution, and I look forward to seeing Ngati Porou continue to grow and develop and make those wonderful contributions to the country in the years to come.